After class chanting, I would require those of you who are attending this class at the shrine hall to stay after class. I have a few announcements to make. So after the chanting of dedication, and only for people from in Larungar. The unsurpassed Dharma is very difficult to hear, and since now I have the opportunity to listen to it, I pray that I would be able to understand the Tathagata's true meaning. And in order to benefit all sentient beings, let's give rise to the Supreme Bodhicitta. So today let's study the Surangama Sutra again. Right now we're at a place where the Buddha and Ananda are conversing, and this part is the 7 attempts of searching for the mind. In fact, Surangama Sutra, especially this part, the 7 attempts of searching for the mind, is very much taken seriously by the great masters. I know lots of commentaries, in fact, are quite short, and they feel that probably short commentaries are sufficient. As we talked earlier, in our previous class, we've already talked about how the mind is not within, and the second attempt is that the mind is not outside. So you can't find mind inside your body, you can't find mind outside of your body. So let's continue to search for the mind. While we're studying the Surangama Sutra, I think the Chinese translation is really beautiful. However, the punctuation and the paragraphs are rather different, because in the ancient transcripts, the Chinese translations doesn't have any punctuations or paragraphs. I myself didn't really have enough time to go over it very thoroughly in terms of the punctuation and paragraphs. However, I consider myself as being very responsible. And I've read through lots of commentaries and distinguished lots of the differences among different commentaries. I also read into the Tibetan version of translation, which are rather quite simple to understand. The Tibetan translation is really beautiful as well. On top of the literary translation of Tibetan language, the meaning of the Tibetan translation is very easy to understand as well. According to Qianlong Emperor's prologue before the translation, he stated that the 4 languages should be included for all the translations of sutras, including Manchurian and Mongolian, the Chinese, as well as Tibetan. So that's written by the Qianlong Emperor in the prologue of the translation. And inside that prologue, he said that in the Chinese Tripitaka, the Surangama Sutra is translated into Tibetan from Chinese language, which he read that Master Bhutan made a prediction 500 years ago, where he said that the Surangama Sutra will be translated back into Tibetan language after 500 years, which is exactly at the time of Qianlong Emperor. And then Master Jiangjia, who was the country's Buddhism guidance at the time, in fact, then made the translation. Also, the Surangama Sutra was translated into Manchurian, Mongolian, and the Tibetan language. And Qianlong Emperor's guidance to Master Jiangjia was that it is the best to translate the sutra as it is, and you don't really have to. And he advised that the translators should not then use unnecessary beautiful language, and it is just like how you should provide food for people who are hungry and provide drinks for people who are thirsty, rather than trying to flowery the unnecessary. Therefore, that's the guideline for the translation. And if the translation could be easy to understand as well as easy to read, then that would be of great benefit to the sentient beings. I feel that the Qianlong Emperor is a great emperor. He became an emperor and started ruling the country at the age of 25, and he stepped down the throne at the age of 85 and passed down the throne to his heir. And during the 60 years of his reign, he supported Buddhism quite greatly and protected the teachings of the Dharma. So the Dharma was in fact quite prosperous during that time. And he then also, his way of translation or his inspiration actually came from his grandfather, who was the emperor of Kangxi. And he knew that his grandfather, in fact, translated the Heart Sutra into 3 different languages, so 4 languages in total. Therefore, he was really inspired, and he made the decision of translate the sutras into 4 languages as well, to include all the sutras in 4 languages. I think the propagation of the Dharma, in fact, matters quite. Have great influence because of the different reigns under different emperors, such as Emperor Kangxi, Master Yunzheng, Master Qianlong. And not only these emperors would protect the Mahayana teaching, they also themselves are great practitioners. So from the historical aspect, from the historical point of view, if the emperor would very much prioritize Buddhism and Buddhism practice, then the emperors would gain great benefit from the Dharma by bringing peace and prosperity to the society, as well as propagating the Dharma to the society that would also benefit the citizens in their country. So let's continue with today's teaching. Previously, we've already understood that, in fact, mind is not within or outside of the body at all. And now Ananda started to ask the question, is it in the middle then? So Ananda then said that, well, world-honored one, as you have studied, my mind does not see what is in my body. It is not within it. And if my body and mind knew each other, they are not separate. And my mind and my mind is therefore not outside of my body. Because Ananda is the attendant of the Buddha. So Ananda is very good at posing questions to the Buddha. So he asks step by step. In some of the commentaries, it says that Ananda was very confident at the beginning when he posed the questions. And later on, after getting refuted by the Buddha, he got a little bit self-doubt and he's not as confident as he used to be. The Buddha's refutation, in fact, caused him to get tired, or rather lost lots of confidence. We can see through the way that Ananda posed questions. But I think Ananda is probably not that fragile or that weak when it comes to refutations from the Buddha. I personally feel that Ananda, after getting refuted by the Buddha, he probably feels great joy. Unlike how mundane beings in our world would feel quite rejected. They probably won't be able to ask questions again as mundane beings, but Ananda is completely different. Of course, through the historical aspect, Ananda had not attained arhathood at that time. He attained arhathood after the parinirvana of the Buddha. So over here it says that the mind is not inside the body and not outside of the body. And then he said that after thinking about this, I know where my mind is. If the mind is inside the body, then the mind should clearly know what's going on inside all the organs or inside the body, should be able to illuminate everything inside the body. So it's not inside the body. That is then stated previously.
那么神性的话呢，就是实际上是指它可以呢，就应该说是这个身体和心呢，就是本来都是
In fact, body and mind
心呢就是了解这个身体的状况，然后这个
have some kind of a relationship where the mind knows what's going on with the body, and also the body is connected to the mind.
在外面的话呢，就是那么这个身和心呢，就是已经就是毫无相干了。
But if the mind is outside of the body, then they're separate. Just like how there are then two consciousness or two mind streams, just like two arhats, that if one arhat were to get full and the other arhat won't get full because of the other arhat got full. Therefore, it cannot be separated, because if the mind is outside the body, then they're separate. They're no longer connected. So for that reason, through such kind of analysis, mind is not outside of the body. Ananda, in fact, is very smart, and right away he knows, oh, I know, the mind is not inside, and it is not outside. I know it very clearly. But now, let me think about it. So Ananda is very good at posing questions, and he's very extensive when it comes to knowledge. Unlike young disciples, unlike young students, whenever they hear different kind of teachings from the teachers, they are very limited in their creativity, and they don't really have a critical thinking where they can pose different questions than what the teachers taught them. If the teacher were to ask the student a different question, then the students are not able to answer it. Rather than that kind of, in fact, compared to that kind of student, Ananda is very different. And I think it's quite important to be able to expand our way of thinking. On one hand, it's very important to listen to the teacher's teaching and be able to then repeat what the teacher taught. On the other hand, it's quite important to expand your thinking to then think of different ways of explaining it so that it will call for creativity to further explain the content. So you need both of these kind of abilities. He said, okay, lasso. Lasso means yes. There are people who are too obedient, and they would say, okay. I think if Ananda is like that, then the Buddha won't be able to give that much of the teachings. In a different province, they pronounce it differently. And according to Lasake, they sound very different too. From Kham area and from Lhasa area, the expressions people use when it comes to say okay is very different too. So Ananda did not follow obediently. He didn't say okay. He in fact continued to ask, saying that now after thinking about it, I know where my mind is. I know it's not inside, it's not outside. I know my mistake. It must be somewhere else. And then the Buddha asked him, so where is it then? And then Ananda replied, since my knowing mind does not see what is in my body, but it can see things outside, I think it is hidden in my sense organ. It must be hiding in my faculty, physical faculty. In the Tibetan translation, in fact, when it comes to a description of the mind, it then describes the mind as luminous and clear knowing. So this kind of knowing mind, this kind of mind that is clearly knowing, does not see does not see the organs that's inside the body, so it doesn't know what's going on inside the body. But at the same time, it could see things outside. It doesn't see anything in the body, but it can see things outside. Just as when the Buddha used his soft and gentle hand, then when the eyes see it, his mind then make the discernment and such kind of thought that it's such a beautiful and gentle hand. So such kind of discernment is made at the time when the eye sees. Therefore, Ananda came to his conclusion saying that I think it's hidden in my sense organs. So he thinks that the mind is not outside, it's not inside, but it must be hidden in the sense organ. And then he gives the example, saying that, for example, if one covers one's eye with a crystal ball, the latter does not obstruct the sense organ, which simply follows the faculty of seeing to distinguish all things seen.
但是呢，就是它不会就是有障碍，就是不会有任何
Just
这个障
as
碍
a crystal
不会有
ball
任何的
that
障碍
covers
而且呢
one's sense
就随着
organ,
这个根呢
that
就
is
是
the
就
eye,
可以就是
but
见到。如果
the
随着见的话
crystal
呢，
ball
那
does
心
not
也是可以
obstruct
这个
the
分别，就
eye's
是可以分别。
capacity of
所以
seeing.
他的这个观点呢是这样的，这个他觉得呢就是心应该藏在这个根
So
里
he
面。
thought
那么
that
这
the
个
mind
根呢
must
就
be
是当
hidden
时
in the
就是
eye.
说是讲了一个比喻，就是他这里扭了一弯呢，就是弯的话呢，
Over
就是
here
可能
it is as
技
a
术
crystal
当中
ball.
是真正的这个我们这个
In
扭力的这
some
个弯呢，就是
Translation, in some commentaries, it says that it is a bowl that is made of crystal. Sometimes it is translated as a cup that is made of crystal. But over here, the Chinese translation, in fact, the word means a thin layer of plate. So a crystal plate. Then there are glasses, and there are the eyeglasses that we wear nowadays. So sometimes the crystals at that time, it could be the colored crystals of the different colored shades that we would wear nowadays. It's a similar kind of function. Master Oyi, in fact, in his commentary, he said that they are just crystal-made eyeglasses. At that time, there's no glasses yet. Therefore, the glass plates are made of crystals. Maybe there are different kinds of colors, tinted colors of the crystals. So when you wear different shades of crystal plates,
这种这个蓝色的，就是这样的这个眼镜的时候呢，那这个眼镜呢，就是这个眼镜的话呢，就是肯定盖住了你的这个原来我们的这个眼球。眼球的话呢，就是肯定是有实质性的一个这个东西呢，就是已经盖着的。但盖着的话呢，就是它这个眼睛呢，就是直接见到这个外面的这个山河大地、万事万物。
But the eye could still see through the crystal, the transparent crystal, and see the mountains and everything outside.
见得到外面的一切这个形形色色的
So at that time, you still be able to see all the phenomena outside.
就是这是白色的，
And
这是
then
绿
at
色
that
的，这是
same time,
红色的，
you can
这是
still make
人，
the
这是动物，
discernment
这是
that
山
oh, this
等
is
等，
blue,
就是
that
它
is
所有的
green,
这
this
些
is
镜像的话
mountain,
呢，
that is a
就当你这
person.
个眼睛
You
就
can still
是
make
接
such
触
kind
的
of
时候呢，
discernment.
就是心呢，就是也是就是跟着就是可以产生不同的这
When your
个各式
eyes
各样的这种
see,
分别念，就是来这个了知，就是这样的话呢，
discernment
眼睛也看
would
到了，心
happen
也已
at the
经
same time.
去了这
So
个
your
分
eye
别
see
了，
and
然
your
后这
mind
个觉了知
discerns.
之心呢，就不见内在。就是因为是更因为
Thus, if my
在
knowing
更当
mind
中，
does
所以
not see
他
what
说
is in my
我
body,
让我这个所就发觉的什
it
么
is
呢？
because
了知的
it's
这
in
个
the sense
心的
organ.
话，那就是它并不是这个见内的，因为呢，它在根当中就是不是在
Because
那个
mind
在身体里
resides
面，
in
它
my
不
sense
可能见
organ,
就是
it is
里面
not
的，就是
inside the
原
body,
因
but
是什么呢？
it
就是因为
resides
它
in
在
my
这
eye
个眼
organ.
根当中，就是他认为是在眼根当中。然后呢，就是分明诸外，就是然后
So
他就
it cannot
分
see
分
what's
明明
inside
清
the
清的，
body.
就是清清楚楚的能看到这个外境，无有障
And
碍。
if it
这个原
sees
因的话呢，
clearly
就是也
what's
在这个潜在
outside
根里
without
面
being
的缘故。
obstructed, it
就
is
是他认
because
为
it
呢，
is
就
hidden
是
in
应
that
该。
organ.
其实他的这种说法的话呢，
In
实际
fact,
上
this
是跟这
kind
个有识
of
中的说
way
法呢是
of
比较相同的。他
explaining
说明明就是外面的这
this
个一切
way
的这
is
种迹象呢，
very
就是他
similar
看得
to
见的，
the
就是
ones
看得见的，
of
而且呢，就是在看的过程当中呢，
the
就像戴着眼镜的
schools
人
where
可以
they would
外
hold
面
onto
外面能见得到嘛。我们有些
particles
人
on
的这
hold
个
onto the
不戴
solid
眼镜的话呢，就
existence.
是什么都看不见，就是然后好像取下来眼镜的时候。
There are people who really
有些人
rely
长
on
期
the
戴眼镜的
glasses.
人，就是然后
If
一
they
取
were
下
to
来的
take
时候
off the
就
glasses, they can't see
就
anything
变
at
成了
all.
另一种人一样的，就是
Maybe
一
they
直在
become
眨眼
someone
的那种。
else, and they
就
would
因为他
blink
可
all
能
the
度数
time.
比较高，或者是怎么样，
Maybe
就
because
是
of the
所以说现在有些人的是什么这个什么猫啊，就是狗啊，就这些也戴眼镜的，就是很多
Maybe
人，
because
因为
of
他们
they're so
在医院
used
里
to
面
the
查的时候，
glasses.
可能他眼睛还是带有一些近视，所以
And
就是有
nowadays
些
people
人
would
很喜
even
欢
give
让猫
the
戴着眼镜，
cats and
然后
dogs
自己
to
戴着
wear
眼镜
glasses as well. And
让
then
孩
they
子
would
戴着
dress
眼
up
镜，我原来
the
在一个地
dogs
方
and
看到过，
cats
然后
with
就什么这个
glasses and
小
shades,
动物也
and
戴眼镜
similarly, they
就
would
也
dress
这
up
样
their
的，就这样
children
的话
with
呢，他
shades.
一取下来过后呢，就是有些时候是看不
There
见
are
的，
people
就这样
who
的。所
can't
以
see
他的
anything
这
at
个
all
眼
after
球呢，
they
就是
take
在
off
这个玻璃
the
片里面，
glasses.
就是 玻璃镜片里面的。那么它这里的意思呢，就是我们的心呢，也是在那个就是在根当中。根的话呢，就是当时按照有识中的观点的话呢，有识中认为呢，就是其实我们的这个色根就是眼耳鼻舌身的话呢，每一个都有这个在知识论当中是这样的，就是都有不同这个形状的。就是不同形状的一种这个色法，他认为是这样的。然后上了那个上唯识中呢，就是在越来越上去的时候呢，他们觉得呢，就是那么这个所谓的根呢，就是能见这个外境的一种能力，就是一种力量，并不是有阻碍的这种设法。就当然这个各宗派的说法是不同的。越上来的时候呢，他们觉得就是这是一种这个所谓的根的话呢，就是一种这个力量，但是这种力量的话呢，这种力量的话呢，就是不一定是有这个有什么就是真正的这个就是微称的这个本体啊，就好像中观庄严论释
According to the commentary of the ornament of Madhyamika, it explains more
那么
in
这样的话呢，
detail.
就是他认为呢，就是应该这个我们的这个心，就是现在这个藏在就是当然这个心呢，就是可能本来这个眼和眼识，就是眼根是这个根，就是然后识的话呢，就是依靠眼根而产生的这种眼识。然而眼识所去的就是白色、红色的这种颜色呢，最后就是通过这个意识来就是进行这个分别的时候呢，才产生的话，这是好看，这是难看，就是有这样的一种分别感。本来是这样的，但这里呢就是并没有分这个根和识呢，就是并没有怎么分吧，就是意思就是说，所谓的这个心呢，就是应该在根中间就是在根里面。就像我们人戴着眼镜的时候呢，就是眼镜在里面，就是然后外面就是这个什么琉璃的这个眼镜呢，就是在外面，他们认为是这样的。那这样的话呢，就是佛陀就开始这个下面就破这个这种观点，怎么样破的呢？就是不搞暗就是如入这个所言呢，就是前跟内者就又入过了，就是下面的是佛陀呢，就是再给他就是重复了一下。
As you just said, the mind is hidden in the same way that the eyes are covered by the crystal ball.
下面就是有一个人问佛陀的时候呢，佛陀说：“你刚才说的是这个样子吗？”这样的。其实现在很多西方的有一些问题的话呢，也是这样的。你刚才这样问的，你没错吧？就是这样的吧？那是这样的话呢，我给你进行回答，就这样。所以我们佛经当中，包括杂汉经的很多的问题，有时候都特别长，就下面的，比如说这个。那就是问了一大堆，就是特别长。然后佛陀呢，就是跟他回答的时候，就是把前面的全部都这个复述一遍。然后呢，你问的是这样吗？没错吗？是的，就是然后阿难说，那就开始进行这个回答。所以这是佛经当中的一种语言方式。他说如所言，就是跟这个前呢，就是跟呢在，就是犹如这个就是琉璃就是犹如你就是这个意识呢已经嵌在根里面。这个呢就像是
and when one so covers them and sees the mountains and rivers, does one also see the bowl? Does the one also see the crystals? Over here, the bowl, in fact, it's a wrong translation. It should be the eyeglasses.
在这样的话呢，就是那他能不能这个见这个琉璃他自己本身呢？
So can you see the glasses?
就是他戴着这个琉璃眼镜的时候呢，那就是见山见水是对的，就是刚才讲的。但是这个人的话呢，就是因为这个琉璃呢已经当着这个眼镜的话，那就是那眼镜呢就是能不能见这个他的眼睛，就是那个琉璃的眼镜，那个能不能见呢？就是佛陀就是问他。
And then the Buddha asked them, "Can you see the glasses?" Ananda then replies, saying that, "Yes, world-honored one can also see the glasses."
就是当时阿难尊者的话呢，就是他就回答，就是说是的，是的嘛，就是那么这个人呢，就是戴着这个琉璃眼镜的时候呢，就是戴着琉璃眼镜当中的话呢，实际上是这个。
Although it is blocking the eye or organs, but the person could still see what's outside, could also still see the phenomena. Of course, over here it is based on the fact that the glasses are transparent, otherwise you won't be able to see.
这是阿难的就是第一个回答。那么这样的时候，佛陀呢就开始前面就破他的这个观点了。那么这个佛告诉阿难呢，就是说。如心呢，就是如出如你这个河杂，那么这个当见善事的时候呢，就是何不见厌？就是那么就是说，如果这个你的心呢，就是跟这个牛力啊，就是通在一起，就是那么你的这个心呢，就是实际上是跟这个牛力呢，就是也是这个一起，就是盖着一样的。那么这样的话呢，就是当你这个见山和见鹤的时候呢，为什么就是不见这个厌呢？就刚才那个心呢，就是实际上是在这个眼根当中嘛。如果眼根当中的话呢，你刚才前面说是这个眼睛呢，就是在牛力当中，牛力眼睛呢，就是能见得到这个外面的这个善，有见得到外面的善恶，有见得到自己的这个牛力。那同样的道理，这个呢就完全是相同的。就是那么跟这个牛力是完全是相同的。怎么相同的话呢？就是那么这个心呢，就是在眼根当中，心在眼根当中的话呢，那么就像刚才就是见牛力一样，就是那么这个心呢，就是眼根就是应该就是见得到。为什么是见得到？它这样问。然后如果它下面的话呢，就是用同等力来破的，就是让它如果说见就是什么样的，如果说不见有什么样的，如果说这个见眼睛，如果说我们的这个心呢，就是能见得到这个眼睛呢，就是见得到眼睛的话呢，那么眼呢就变成了这个动静了，眼就不是眼根了，就是它就已经变成了对境了，就是因为我们本来是无根无境嘛，无根无境的话呢，那么眼根呢就是见着，然后外面的设法呢就是所见的对境。这样的，但是如果这个心呢，就是能见得到这个眼睛的话呢，那么这个眼睛就已经就是变成了这个镜一样的，就是不是根了，已经变成了这个对镜了。所以呢，就是不得这个成事，这样一来的话呢，那么就没办法就是这个分辨量呢也跟着它嘛，因为它就已经变成了这个对镜，就是不是跟着这个眼，不是成了这个眼睛，已经成了这个对镜，对镜色法了，对镜色法的话呢，那么心就没办法，心是跟着这个眼根，就是跟着这个眼睛而走。他看到一个呢，就是你产生这是白色的、红色的。但是如果只是一种变成这个对镜的话呢，那自己的眼根就是没有什么关系，没有什么见到，没有什么见到的话呢，那怎么会就是
？Your eyes have such a function of seeing the colors and the shapes and so on. But if the mind could perceive the eye directly, then the mind is seeing directly rather than using the eyes to see, isn't it? So your eye doesn't have any function to it anymore, and it became the object of being seen by the mind. So that's the first fallacy, or the first refutation by the Buddha. The second one says that if your mind is, if they cannot be seen, if your eyes cannot be seen, how can you say that this knowing mind is hidden in the sense organ? Because if the mind is inside the organ, because mind is luminous and knowing and clear knowing, so this knowing mind is, if it's already hidden in the sense organ but not able to see this organ, then it doesn't make sense because it is then contradicting, it is in contradiction with one another. Therefore, your contention that knowing mind is hidden in the sense organ is groundless.
嵌在眼里面就如同玻璃这个盖住那样的这个说法呢，就是无有是处啊，就是这个说法是这个无有是处，就是所以说这个地方的话呢，就是它的这个破法呢，就是主要是在根当中呢，就是不能有一个
The way the Buddha refuted Ananda was through the two ways. One is that if the mind is like the crystal glasses, then there are two possible results that comes from such kind of analogy. The first one is that the mind could see the eye, and the second one is the mind cannot see the eye. If the mind could see the eye, then in such a way, the eye no longer has a function of seeing anymore, but it is rather perceived as an object of being seen by the mind. And the second result is that you cannot see the eye. Then in such a way, then the mind lost its knowing and luminous characteristic of knowing. So in such a way, it is then in contradiction of one another. As Ananda stated that if the glasses are like the mind, then once you see through the eyes, once you see through the glasses, you should be able to see the external phenomena. Usually when we talk about faculties, therefore, if Ananda were to then say that the mind is within the sense organ, then that's wrong. I think in the way of the Bodhisattva, it also stated that the mind does not abide in any of the faculties. It does not abide in the skandhas. You cannot find it inside nor outside. You cannot find it anywhere else either. So consciousness does not stay or does not abide with any of the organs or faculties. It does not abide in the skandhas. It does not abide within or outside. And you cannot find it anywhere else either. Previously, we've already studied that you cannot find it inside, you cannot find it outside, you cannot find it in the middle of an organ either. During the part of studying of finding the selflessness of phenomena, in fact, it goes through a similar analogy where you can find it outside, you can find it inside, you cannot find it in the middle, you cannot find it within the organ. The next one. The fourth one is in fact quite difficult to understand, therefore you should use all your wisdom to follow this part of contention. I'll slow down, otherwise I'm afraid that for those of you who listen to Surangama Sutra for the first time, you will then encounter some difficulties. So, the fourth attempt of searching for the mind. I think this is a rather difficult one to understand. Therefore, I ask of you to use your sharpest wisdom and be prepared to use it. I'm going to drink a little water and I'll continue with it. Just as how we should prepare the horses. Some horses are sharp and some are dull, some are faster, some are slow. So I'm going to see who can get enlightened through this one. Sometimes I feel it's really wonderful to study something that's rather a little bit more difficult, because there are lots of people who are rather quite prideful, and if it was not for some difficult knowledge that they won't be able to understand, then it won't distract their arrogance. Over here, Ananda asked, "World-honored one, I now think of the glasses concealed in the body of the aperture of its surface." So Ananda is very determined to understand for how and where is it the bowels concealed. Over here, it is says that all sentient beings, in fact, it has two parts, because the bowels and all the organs are then concealed in the body, and the apertures are on its surface. For sentient beings, despite human beings or other animals, they have organs inside, and they have different apertures on the outside or on the surface. The organs such as heart and kidney and the spleen and so on, and the bowels such as the intestines. So within the body, in fact, there are different kinds of organs. And outside of the body, or on the surface of the body, there are different kinds of orifice or apertures, as we usually call it, the 7 openings or 7 orifice.
在内的话呢，应该是就是身体的这种内脏。
Inside the body, there are the viscera and bowels lie inside, and while the orifices are open to the exterior, on the surface and open to the exterior. So there is darkness at the bowels and light at the orifice. Therefore, whatever is hidden inside the body are then in darkness, but whatever is on the surface, on the exterior of the body, then they are in light. So Ananda, first of all, before he presented his argument, he stated that of his understanding of the body first, what is in the dark and what is in the light. And then Ananda continued to say that now as I face the Buddha and open my eyes, I see light, and that is to see outside. Just as when you open your eyes, you can see the teacher, you can see the assembly, and so on. And Ananda opens his eyes, he can see the Tathagata, he can see the assembly, he can see the park, he can see the assembly hall. So Ananda continued to say that when I close my eyes and see darkness, that is to see within. So this is called seeing within. In fact, seeing inside is the contention that the Buddha will refute mostly over here. He did not refute of seeing outside. And then Ananda said that, well, how does that principle sound? How does that idea sound to you? I think Ananda is quite good at posing questions. Rather than I feel lots of people would not continue to ask questions. They would just say okay or yes and just simply listen blindly without thinking for themselves. So Ananda is more intelligent than we are. And Ananda's idea is that when we close our eyes, we then see the darkness. I think in some ways it probably fits other people's idea as well, that when we close our eyes we see this darkness. I think the Buddha then refutes in the way that is very similar with the Madhyamika Shinton way of posing questions. And then the Buddha said to Ananda, when you close your eyes and see darkness, does the darkness you experience lie before your eyes? This kind of darkness that you experience at
对
this
眼睛就
moment.
是相对，还是对烟呢就是不相对？就是它这里
Does
对
it
的话呢，
does it
藏文
lie
当中
before your
藏文
eyes?
翻译的时候呢，就是对眼根就是接触还是不接触？就是
In the
它这
Tibetan
样来翻
translation,
译
it did
的。
not say lie
那
before your
这样
eyes. It
接触不
actually
接触
says
的
that
话
did
也
such
可以吧，就
darkness
是名
touch
称上
your
是可以
eye
这么说。
organ
但实际上是
or touch your
就
eyes.
是意思就是说，
In some
当
ways,
你
you
看
could
到这个内
explain
在的
it.
这种暗的时候
But
呢，就是这
what it
种黑暗
means
的
here
东西呢，
is
就是
that
对
when
眼
you
睛
see
是
the eye, when you see
成
the
不成为它的
darkness,
对境，就是可能
does
成不
the
成为
eye
是它的对境
perceive
是更加
the
好懂一点吧，
object
就是
of
因为
darkness?
我
I
们
think
这
this
个
is an
按照
easier way
小
of
乘宗的说
understanding
法的
it.
话，那就是境和根
According
的
to
话
the
呢，实际上
Theravada
是并
teaching,
不是
in
完全借
fact,
助，就是并不
the
是。当然有
object
有
and
一
the
部有
organs
一部
do
有
not
一部这个
completely
居士论当中
touch
有一部观点呢，就
one
是
another.
他认为是这个借助
But
啊，就是
according
根
to
称呢就是有
Abhidharma,
借助。
one of the
有一部
Abhidharma
一
teaching
部居士论
where
的大
it
数里
says
面，我
that
记得就是有一部分
the
认为呢，就是有这
some
个
of
接
the
触的，对吧？
object
就是有
would
接触的。
then
但是很多人
touch
呢，就
the
是认为是
organ,
接触可能没有的
the
话呢，就是
faculty.
也是这个
It could
见
be
得到的，
explained
因为
in
是
different ways
静
because
的话呢，
darkness
就是
and
第一
light
刹那
could
就是
also
这
be
个，然
explained
后
as
什么
tiny particles of darkness and tiny particles of lightness, according to the Theravada tradition in the Abhidharma teaching, one of the commentary on the
根，就是
Abhidharma.
那么依靠它的话，那就是产生那个什么，产生那个识，对吧？就是按照量力报宗论的说法。
And
这样
according
的
to
话，
Pramana, then the teaching is a little bit different.
那么他这里就是问了几个问题啊，就是大家应该要注意啊，就是你们的
Pay attention
这
to
个
the
智
few
慧要
questions of the Buddha
中立
asked.
的智慧要拿出来啊，
Okay,
就是
use your
开始
sharp wisdom now.
那么意
This
思
is
是就是
important.
刚开始就不要那个就一般这个看什么这个历史啊，看小说啊，就
I
是看
think when
电影啊，
people watch
这个是关键的
movies,
词不能
watch
丢了，就是关键的词掉了，后面的很
what
多情节
read
就
different
就搞不懂
fictions,
啊。
this
所以
is the
它这里呢，就
climax
是刚开
part
始说是你
of
闭着眼睛的时
all
候呢，
those kind of
就是有个
storylines.
暗的
Otherwise, you'll
境界
get
呢，
lost.
就是这
So
种
you
黑
have
暗
to
的
pay
境界
attention
呢，
over here.
你这个是不是就是你的
And
眼
the
根
Buddha
呢，就
says
是有
that
没有这个对境的作用，或者是你对
does
着这个
your
眼根没有啊，就
eyes
是有还是没有？
then
他这里这样讲。
perceive the
如果一眼
object
对啊，就
of
如果说
darkness?
这个黑暗的话，那就是对眼睛是直接有这个对境的作用，就是一直直接相对的。
And
那么这样的话呢，暗在眼前，云何成呢？
if
那这样的话，这个暗呢，就是
if
已
it
经变
is
成了你的这个眼前的东西了。眼前的东西的
if
话，
it
怎么会
were
是成为
within,
这个内见
then
呢？
we
啊，就是这么，因为这个暗呢，就是其实暗的话呢，就是按照居士论的说法是，它是一种微尘，
as
光明也
I
是一
said
种微尘，
earlier,
黑暗
in
也是一
fact,
种微
according
尘。
to
然后
Abhidharma,
如果你
the
眼
light
睛就
and
是
the
对着它的
darkness
话呢，
could
就
be
是那么这
considered
种
as
暗
a
啊，就是
small
这种暗
particle
呢，就是已
of
经变成在
lightness
你
or
的这个眼
darkness.
前，就是怎么称为这个就是成内呢？就是因为已
So
经
the
变
Buddha
成外
said
面的
that
东西了，就已经
if you were
眼
to
根以外
say
的这
that
个东西。
darkness
如果是
is the
内的话，那
object
就是应该在自
of
己的内在的这
your
种身体
eye,
上
then
这样的。
the
那就如果
object
这个
would
黑暗就
be
真
the
的成了
outside
你的
of
眼
your
睛的对
body.
境的话呢，已经变成了外在的东西，
It
怎么会
would
是变
be
成
the
内在
object
的
that
东
is
西
to
呢？
be
就是这
perceived
是
by your
第
eye
一个方
organ.
面。
Therefore, it must be
啊，
outside
如
of your
果成
body.
内，就是如果说
It'd be
这个
outside
明明
of
是
you.
这个是外面的对境，但
It
你
would be
认为是
other
这是
than
你
you.
这个内见，就是这是
But then
成内
you
的话
would
呢，哦，哪有
call
很大
it
的
to
过程？
be
什么样的
seen
过程呢？
within.
当我们这个聚在一个暗室当中，没有太阳，没有月亮，没有灯的
If
这
it
种
were
光明，
within,
这样的这种暗室的话呢，实际上呢，就是因为什么都黑暗的
then
东西的话，
when
你
you
就
are
认为
in
是
a
你的
dark
这个
room
对境。
without
那么
light
这样的
of
话呢，就是
the
它都
sun,
已
the
经
moon,
变
or
成了你的
lamps,
这个教
then the
父啊，就
darkness
是你
in
的
the
这个
room
身
would
体这
constitute
个啊，
your
就看刚才前面讲这个五脏六
stomach,
腑
the
的话
three
呢，
parts of
就是我们
the
内在的
stomach.
不能见到的
In
东西。
fact,
不能见到的东西，
the
如
different
果
organs or
你说这个
viscera and
黑暗呢，
bowels
就是
in
已
your
经变
body.
成了你的眼睛的这种对
If you were to
这
say
个
that the
对境啊，就
darkness
是已经眼
became the
睛的对
object
境，而且
that
它
to
是
be
成为内
perceived
在的
by
对
your
境
eye
的话呢，
organ,
那就是这个暗无天日的这个黑色的话呢，
then
也变成了你的这个身体的这个
such kind of
就是
darkness
内脏
also
就是一模一
becomes
样，就是咱们当中
your
是一样，
organ,
有一个
and it
叫
is
这
no
个
other than your
相同的嘛，
organs.
因为它
It
那
is
个
part
黑
of
暗的
you.
这个物质的话呢，就是实际上什么都没有东西，什么都没有见
In
到，
fact,
但是呢，你
darkness
认为是见到的嘛。 嘛。那这样的话，你眼根已经
If
对
it
着
were
那的话，
seen
那
by
就是
you,
什么都
then
没有见到的
you
这个黑
think
识的话，那就是
then
变
it
成了
could
你
be
的这
called
个
as your
内脏，
organs,
或者是你的所见，或者是你的
or
棱
the
镜，
object
已经变成
of
这样了。
your
懂了没有？
perceiving
就是
as
这个
well
是
as
第一步
the
啊。
capacity of seeing. Did you understand that? And that's the first logic link.
如果对着的话，那就是有这个啊，就是讲了2个故事吧，就是这样的。 如不对症，就是如果你的眼
If
根
it
呢
is
就是
not
对这个
before
黑
you,
暗呢
it
就
is
是
not
没有
the
这个
object of
成为这
your
个对
eye.
境的作用，就是没有对它相对。那就这样的话呢，就是云和成见呢，
Then how
怎
can
么
you
回事？
see?
变
How
成
how
一
can you
种
call
见，
it
就是如果
as being
见的话
seen?
呢，你一定要在你的前面就是
Because
对
if
你
you
的这
were
个
to
对
see
境跟你
something,
的
then it
眼
has
根
to
呢，就
be
是要互相这个对视
perceived
啊，就是应该
by
有
your
这个
eye,
对视的作用，
and
否则
it
的话
has
呢，
to
你
be the
看着这个动
opposite
善，就是你
of
背后的这
the
个
eye
细善
organ,
呢，就是
and
能不
then
能变成这
you
个
can
相对
perceive it,
对
isn't it? It
对
has
境
to
而
be
见
other
的，
than your
不可
eye
能的这个
organ,
事情了，就不可
and
能
it
的
has
事情。
to be
所以呢，
on the
你如
other
果说是
side
这
for
个
the eye organ
这
to be
个你
perceived,
的眼
just
根呢
as
就是
the
不
west
对而见
mountain
黑
and
暗
the
的话呢，
east
那就
mountain
没有
are
实证，
on
这
the
是绝
two
对不可
opposite
能的。你
two
对都不对
opposite
的话，那
sides
你
of
怎么
each
能
other, then you
能
can
见
call
呢？
it
就是应该，如果我们要
as
见到的话，那就是
then
一定要见到
the
对
the
方。
other.
如果没有见到对方，就是
So
那
if you do not see the
中间
other,
有什么阻碍呀，或者说是你
is
根本
it
就是
then
不在利用的
being
话，那就是那没办法就是见到，
blocked
这
by
不叫做什么
something
呢？就
else
是
in between?
就是对这个眼根呢，就是没有这个对相，就是对视，或者是没有成为对境，就是这是
So
第二
in
个方
such a
面
way,
对和不对的这种分
that's
析啊，
the
就是这个
second
眼根对和不对的分析。
refutation by the
然
Buddha
后
that
然后
it is
然
not
后
the
呢，就
seen.
是说
It
这
is
个
not
下
the
面的
object
这
of
个分
being
析方
perceived.
法呢，
The
它就
next
没有这个对不对，就是它就是对眼根对和没有对，没有这样分析。然后按照那个
the
阿难
Buddha
尊者
then
他的这个
continued
分
to
析，就是
refute.
他不是说是内见嘛，就是他认为是有一种内见，他就
Because
把这个
Ananda
内见呢，就
thinks
是作为
that
他
he
对方的
sees
观点呢，又
inwardly.
进行剖析。啊，就是这是第
So
二个方面的破法。刚
The
才
Buddha
刚才
then
那个对
started
呢，
to
就是对或
refute
者是不对的，
of
就是
the
已经破完
inward
了。
seeing.
然后下面就说啊，就是说是若逆外见，
And
就
he
是
said
内对
that
成说。这个地方的，
if
当
you
然这个
assert
可能
that
自
there is
算的
an
这个解释方
inward
法是
seeing
这
that
个表达
is
方法是可以
distinct
这样的
from
但是
seeing
我看
outside.
藏文和还有很多方面的话呢，这样解释很难解释，就很难就
The
过去。那么这
punctuation
样的话，这个
of
变
the
成逗号
Chinese
吧，
one
就是这
should
样，
be
就是若逆这个外
switched,
见，
should be
然后
changed.
就是内对呢，就是做成。
If it is not
合言
opposite
就
to
是
your
见
eye, how
暗，
can there
名
be
为
any
慎
seeing?
重，就是这个是对方的观点，就是然后就是佛陀呢，就是说阿难，
So
你
the
不是
Buddha
说
said
是
that if you say
如果
that
你所谓的这个内见的话呢，就是离
the
开了这
seeing
个外见，
inwardly
然后离
is
开外见
then
以后的话呢，就是内
depart
内
from
对
seeing
这个
outside
内
is
见的话呢，就
distinct
是已
from
经这
seeing
个成
outside.
已经
And
成
in
立了
that，case,
已经成
when
立的
you
话呢，那么就是合眼看
close
见
your
见
eyes
暗，就是
and
那么
see
闭着眼
darkness,
睛的时候呢，就是见着暗，就是那么这个叫做是那么身体的内见，就是你不是这
then
样
you
说了吗？
would be
就
seeing
这个是一
inside
个
the
作
body,
为，
isn't
如
it?
果你是这样说的话呢，
So
就
the
是这
Buddha
样的
then
解释就比较
refuted
好
in
懂
this
一
way,
点，
saying
就
that
不然
if
那个可能
you
其他
were
的很多注
to
释
say
我也
that
对了很多，但有些这个大师的话呢，到了这些比较难懂的地方的话呢，直接走了，
the
就不理
commentaries
了
that I
就是
read, I
就
feel that
我们
they're
还是
avoiding
很
this
希
kind of
望就是啊，
difficult
这个大师会不会
logical
就讲得细一
questions,
点，
and
那个
they
大师讲
in
得细
fact
一点，
didn't
但是
explain
一
too
到
much
这里
in
的
the
时候就
commentary.
大家都
But what I found
就
is
不太
that they
惯
got
了，就
very
是
concise.
那就
Rather,
就
they
我们
got
可以这样解释，
really
如果你
brave
这个
when
外
it
见
comes
就
to
是
such
内
kind
对
of
成立，
difficult,
然后这样这个
difficult
合眼这
logical
见暗
lines.
或者是见这个
Anyhow,
内身的
it
话
says
呢，
that if
那
you
么
would see
这
inside
样
the
的话
body,
就是开眼就是见明了，合不见面就是。因为
therefore,
那
when you
个
open
内
your
见的话
eyes
呢，就
and
刚才不
see
是这样
light,
的嘛，
why
就是
can't you
外
see
见
your
没
own
有，
face?
然后内见的话呢，
So
实
it
际上
says
内
that
见就是
if
按
you
照这个
cannot
阿难的
see
说法的话呢，就是内见就是里面就是什么都能见得到，连黑暗都
You
能见
can
得到。
so
连身
when
身体里面也
Ananda
是能见得
then
到。如果是这样的
Ananda's
话呢，
contention is
这
that
样
when
的
you
见
look
解呢，
inward,
就
you
是
can
当
see
他睁开眼
darkness.
睛的时候呢，
Then
应该是
the
就
Buddha
是见
asked,
到这个明显，啊，
if
就是
you
见到
open
明
your
显。
eyes
那
and
么
see
见到这
light,
个就也叫做是见明嘛，就是
then why
见到
can't
睁
you
开眼睛的时
then
候
why
见
can't
完
see
就是
your
见
own
明。
face?
那这种见明的话呢，就是为什么是不见自己的面部啊？就是他这里就是开始退嘛，就是第一个是他就退出这样的这个就应该是自己的这个面呢，就是应该能见得到的啊，就
Because
是面
if
就是自己的面部应
light,
该能
if
见。
once you
为
open
什么
your
呢？
eye
因为你的
organ,
这个见
you
色的
should be
性
able
呢，
to see
就是
your
面
face
内部的
first.
这个身体的 黑暗都能见得到的。那
Because
最
if
近的
your
这个
eye
面部呢，
organ
就是
could
怎么能见
see
得到呢？
even the
就是应
darkness
该能见得
within,
到的，就是
then why
你念这
can't
个内
you
部的
see
黑
the
暗都能见得到
brightness
的话
that
呢，
is your
你自己
face?
最近的自己的脸
Because
是
your
为
face
什么见
would
不到
be
的？
the
对，
closest
那
one
么
to you.
下面呢，就是它这里有几个不同的这个例文了。如果不见面，就是内
And then
对
the
不
Buddha
成。
continued
就
to
是
say
如
that
果
if
你
you
说是
cannot
这
see
个
your
自己的
face,
面是根本没办法见到，那这样的话呢，就是内对是不能成立的。就是因为你连这个面都不能见到的话呢，那连自己的
then
面都不能见的话，
there
那
can be no
内
seeing
部怎么见
within.
呢？黑
How
暗
can
怎么
you
讲
see the
就是根本
darkness
不成
within?
立的，就是
It
所以
doesn't
这个
work
是根
that
本不
way.
成立的。 如果见面若成，然后
If
下
you
面
can
第
see
二
your
个这个
face,
问题就开始
that's the
对
second
了，就是为什么
refutation
呢？
based
如
on
果
the
见
previous one.
见
It
自
says
己的
that
面，就是能见到
if
自
you
己的
can see
面
your
的，这个
face,
是成立的话呢，那么次了者之性
then
还有
your
严
mind
谨
that
严耿，
knows
然后
and
呢，他们呢就
understands,
是应该人
and
在
your
这个虚
organs
空
of
当
vision
中，
as
就是
well as
合
well
合
must
成
be
在内，就
suspended
是怎
in
么会是
space.
变成内呢？就是它这里前面的话
How
呢，就
can
是
they
应
be
该是
part of your body then?
这
How
个
can it be
如果是不
inside
能
your
见自
body
己的
then? It doesn't work
什
in
么？
such a way.
如果睁开眼睛的时候呢，就是这个内心的能见得到的话
So
呢，
the
就是
Buddha
自己
then
的眼
again
为什么不
refuted
能见？
from the
这是第
two
一个态度。
aspect.
然后
The
第二个
first
态度呢
aspect is，
如
from
果
the
能见成自
the
己的面
aspect
的话呢，
if you
那见
cannot
自己的
see your
面呢，就是
face.
那一定会是到了这
If
个
you
对
cannot
对面
even
去
see your
啊，
own
就是就
face
像我
when
们
there's
修分的
light,
一样的，就
then
是
how can
那
you
么这个
say
心和
that you
眼呢，
can
就是应
see
该跑到
darkness
对
when
面去。
your
不
eyes
然
are
的话，
closed?
像我的面就是怎么见呢？就是我照镜子的话，可能不需要对面去，
There's
但是
the
那个时候就
commentary.
并没有按那个照镜子来这个说的。如果你要见我的面的话，那就是那你不可能有我用自己的心识就是自己见自己，就是这个也没有办
In
法，
fact,
应该是跑到这个
in
对面。
fact,
这
when you
是
say
一种
that
推
if
理
you
嘛，
can
就是
see
这
your
种
face,
法太过，就
then
是
your
因成
mind
太
that
过嘛，因
knows
成
that
太过的话，
understands your
那你
organ of
应
vision
该
as
这个
well
你的
must
所谓
be
的心识呢，
suspended
就
in
是
space
因为
because
见自己的
if
面
you
的话
were
呢，
to
那
see
就
your
是一
face,
定要
there are
把这个
two
就是变
ways
成
of
这个
there
你的
there
眼格
there
和
is
你
a
的
way of
心呢，就是
looking
跑
to the
到这
mirror,
个
of
虚空
course,
当
but
中去，不然的话呢，就是
but
怎么
that
会
would
是
be
变成
only
这
a
个内
reflection
见
of your
就是
own
怎么变
face.
成内见，怎么变成我这
But
个见
if
自己
your
的面呢？
organ
就
could
是没
see
办法
your
的，这是
face,
第二个
the
方面的
organ
这
of
个
eye
这个
that
身和
sits
心
on
呢，
your
就是应
face
该
to
形成
see
分
your
离，就
own
是
face
因为
in
身
such
体
a
在
way,
这里，
then
然后
your
心
mind
和这个
would
眼
be
根的话呢，应该跑到这个虚
suspended
空当中去了，就是
somewhere
这样
in
的
the
一个态
space
度
to
啊，这是
see
第二
and
个态度。
clearly
那么第
know
三个
your
态度的话
face
呢，就是降到
outside of your body.
若在虚空，
Then the
如果
mind
如果
cannot
你
be
的这
part
个
of your
心呢，
body
就是还要
anymore
验呢，
because
就
it's
像
in
我
the
们现在
space
经
and
常讲的
perceiving
出
your
窍
mind,
嘛，就是出
perceiving
窍，
your
灵魂出窍，
face.
就是然后跑到什么这
Sometimes
个天
people
板啊，
would
跑
say
到什么
that
地方去，
there
就是
are
看到
different
自
kinds
己
of
的
out
身
of
体啊，就
body
有这种说法吧，
experience
就是就像这样的话呢，
where
那如
the
果你的这个
consciousness
心识
would
和这
be
些呢，就
half
是在虚空
floating
当中
in
的
the
话呢，
ceiling and
那么就
looking
是
at your
自
own
非如
face.
泣啊，就
There
是
there
自
is
非
some
如
kind of
泣，就是
experiences like that.
那么如果是你的这个心识在虚空当中的话，那就是那么自己的身体呢，
But
就
in
是跟
such
这
a way,
个
then
虚空
your
当中的
mind
这个心
is
识呢，就是应该
suspended
不是这个一
halfway
体的，就是不是一体的，
or
应该
in
是
the
分
space
开的，
and
就是一个是在虚
perceiving
空
your
当
own
中，一个
body.
是在这里嘛。那么这样的话，就像是这个
In such a
如
way,
来
then
呢，
it's
就是见到
separated
你
than
的
your
这个
body.
面的话呢，就是你也应该就变成了这个你的身体。如来呢，就是应该
And
变
in
成
such a
你的
way,
身体。他这里说
if
是
the
形成
Tathagata
这
at
个
that
后
time
身
sees
呢，就
your
是变成
face,
自身，就是第三
wouldn't
个
the
第二个
Tathagata
第二
also
个
be
态度
part
是
of
什
your
么呢？
mind?
为什么呢？就是
Wouldn't
如
the
来的这个
Tathagata
身
be
呢，
part
就
of your
是一定
body?
会是你的身体，因为呢，你这个见到这个面的缘故，就像是什么？
And
就
if
是
you
你的
can
这种
see your
心眼一
face,
样的，就是它这
then
个
your mind
好像那
knows
个
and
自旋
understands
是
your
吧？有
organ
一
of
个里
vision
面
as
呢，
well
就
must
是
be
它就
suspended
立
in
了一
space.
个
How
三
can they
相
be
对
part
应
of your
就是
body?
它三相
And
对应
if they're
他
in
说
space,
如来的身
then
体
they're
呢，
not
就
part
是
of
一
your
定是你
body.
的
Otherwise,
身
the
体。
Tathagata
为
who
什么
now
呢？因
sees
为
your face
你
would be
那
part
个
of your
见到
body
这
as
个你
well.
的面的缘故，
Master
就
Zixuan
见到你的面的
then
缘
over
故，
here
就像
made
是你
the
的心和眼一
threefold
样的，你的心和眼呢，就已
threefold
经承认了，
argument
就是见到
where
自己
then
的
in the
面嘛，
first
就
it
是这样
says
的话呢，
that
那么这个如来的话呢，就是也应该就是变
if
成了你的身
your
体。
body
原因是
is
什么呢？就是当时佛在前面的
if
话，
you
他
could see
看到
your
就是你的面和你
your
的
own
这个
face,
这个
then
身
it
体呢，
shows
他
that
看得到的。那
your
么
mind
你
is
他能看得到的
then
你
in
的
the
话呢，就是
space.
实际上
And
是
then
自
at
己的
that
心和
time,
这个自己的
if the
这
Tathagata
种
in
这
the
个
space would
眼
also
识
sees
啊，
your
因为
face,
你的
then the
眼，你
Tathagata
自己
also
的
be
心和
part
自
of
己的
your
眼识
body.
的是已经跑到空中去，就是然后 候呢，就看到自己过去了。那么这个是完全是一样的，就是这是发的这样的一个态度。就是刚才前面的话呢，就是你的心呢，就是不在内，因为那个见你的面如同他人一样。刚才我们前面的
that you cannot see inwardly, and if you were to be able to see your own face, then it means that your mind is in the space.
见到你的面，就是见到你的面的话呢，肯定不是自己的这个身体里面，就像他人一样的。
Then your mind is perceiving or looking at your face just as someone else is looking at you as the object of perception.
这是第二个问题，就是这是。就意思就是说呢，你应该称这个佛陀呢，就是跟自己的身体一样了，就是这是第二个。
So in such a way, the Buddha is just like your own body.
呢，就是说这个就是我们的这个身和根呢，就是互相的就应该变成没有感觉。
The third refutation is as in that case, when your eyes perceive something, your body would remain unaware of it.
因尘无有感受，就是这个过程。那么这是什么样呢？如愿一致，就是身和肺聚。
So the fault of not perceiving when your mind is somewhere else and your body is here. Because when your eye could perceive, when your mind could perceive your face, because your mind would be outside in the space, isn't it? Because it's perceiving your face. But at that same time, could you feel your body? So maybe your mind and your eye organ is somewhere floating in the space. And then if you were to press the point and say that the body and the eyes each have an awareness, or can you be aware of such kind of pressing? Could you feel your body? Could you be aware of it? If you were to be able to look at your own face, perceive that, and then at the same time feeling your body being pressed, then you're having two mind streams. That means that you have two consciousness or two minds. Then once you attain enlightenment, you become two Buddhas. Did you understand that? Okay, I'll be very interested in the after-class presentation now, because this part would be very difficult to understand, and I'll particularly ask you to repeat this part. Therefore, your contention that to see darkness inward is inward seeing is groundless. It is impossible. So over here it shows that the mind that resides in the middle of the organ is then impossible and groundless. Just as in the Sixth Platform Sutra, it says that if you do not recognize what the mind is, then you won't be able to receive true and genuine benefit of studying the Dharma. So the genuine nature of mind, if you don't understand it, if you don't grasp it, then it will be very difficult to understand and to continue the study. I read in a book where it says that, in fact, mind, not only it could I read in a book where it says that we should recognize mind when it is looking at ourselves, and if we do not understand what the nature of mind is, then mind could bring lots of unnecessary sufferings. But for people who recognize the nature of mind, then they can enjoy the freedom and rest at ease at any time. So without knowing what the nature of mind is, maybe mind, it's really nothing, but it brings lots of experience of suffering to you. Therefore, to people who are studying the Dharma, I really hope that you could study and practice the kind of methods to recognize the nature of mind. I think lots of times we would get really distracted into different kinds of trades and skills, such as poetry, such as design, such as architecture, and different knowledges. Of course, it's necessary because we need our trades to make a living. But what's more important is to know the nature of our mind, and we need to know different kinds of trades and methods of recognizing it. In fact, through karma, we could make lots of. In fact, through the energy of power, there are lots of possibilities of fettering yourself. Just as how fools are fettering themselves up from all the different kinds of emotions and afflictions. Just as the story I've heard that in ancient times, a person who's named as Lo Kuang, and he invited his friend to his home, and they were drinking together. And after drinking, the friend exhibited some discomfort and then left Leguang's house and went back home. But after the friend went back home, he got gravely ill. And then Leguang went to see him and asked him what happened. The friend answered that I saw that there was a small snake that sits in the middle of my wine cup, and I carelessly drank it in my stomach, and then I think I'm dying because of that. Then Leguang went back home and saw that there is a reflection of the arrow on the wall where would reflect like a snake shape. So Leguang understood that really the friend was really scared of his own imagination. So Leguang then invited his friend to come to his home, and his friend came, and Leguang showed him the reflection in his cup. And the friend got really frightened upon seeing another small snake in his wine cup. Leguang was really smart, and he then took off the arrow from the wall, and then at that moment, the friend understood, oh, it was only a reflection, and it was only his own imagination. I think it really clearly shows that the mind is the one which fetters people. Our conceptual thoughts, our dualistic thoughts, are the ones that really fetters us, prisons us. Sometimes when we think about this kind of stories, it's very stupid. It's really silly. It is not possible. Why would people get fooled by such kind of reflection and get gravely ill? But when you really contemplate upon such kind of story, you'll be able to understand that in fact the imaginations or the conceptual thoughts of people, in fact, it is based on the people's personal emotion and imagination and conceptual thoughts and understanding. Because at that moment, the friend saw that snake. The friend misunderstood that it was a snake and took that very seriously as a snake, and then got gravely ill. A doctor told me that my lung was having some big problem. I had to then go through a surgery right away, and right away I felt that there's a pain in my lung. And then I went to Chengdu, and the doctor, after detailed checkups, the doctor said there's nothing happening to your lung. And right away I felt that there's no pain around my lung area anymore. I think it's really just all mind. Therefore, we really need to understand the nature of mind and to watch and to see what the true mind is. I feel Vajrayana teaching is much simpler than the Surangama Sutra. The Surangama Sutra's way of finding where the mind is more difficult than the Buddhist logic. I think we'll stop here today.
Chubum